My husband called me just a bookkeeper the morning he handed me divorce papers on our front porch in Oakville and told me I had until 5 o'clock to clear out. He said it with his arms folded and his chin up, the way he always stood when he was certain he had won something. His mother was 2 steps behind him, holding her coffee mug like a prop, wearing the pearl earrings she only put on when she wanted to remind me what I was not. I had just come back from 4 days in Sudbury settling my grandmother's estate, 4 days of paperwork and grief and a very long conversation with her notary that had left me with information I had not yet shared. I was planning to tell my husband that evening. He did not give me the chance. "The house closed this morning," he said, before I could even set my bag down. "Numbered company. Cash deal. The proceeds are in an account you will never find. You have until 5 to take whatever fits in a taxi." His mother made a small sound of satisfaction. I looked at the envelope he was holding out, then I looked at her pearl earrings, then I looked at the flat November sky above our street. And I smiled. He hated when I did that. I could see it move across his face, that specific irritation he always felt when I failed to react the way he had planned. "What exactly is so funny?" he demanded. I reached into my coat pocket and removed a single sheet of paper I had printed at my grandmother's notary's office 2 days earlier, when I had already begun to suspect what was waiting for me at home. I unfolded it slowly. "The numbered company you sold this house to this morning," I said, keeping my voice completely level, "has been under active CRA audit for 7 months. The investigators flagged it as a conduit for unreported offshore income transfers. That transaction didn't move money into your account. It handed a federally monitored asset directly to the Canada Revenue Agency. Before I tell you what happened next, before I walk you through exactly why none of them escaped what was coming, let me tell you who I am. If you've ever had someone use your own life against you while you quietly built the case to dismantle their affairs, leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is what I do. I am a forensic accountant. I hold a CPA designation and a graduate certificate in financial fraud investigation from the University of Toronto. And for the past 9 years, I have worked as an independent consultant, including on several occasions for the CRSA itself. My husband knew this. He also, somehow, never actually believed it. That particular gap between knowing a fact and understanding what it means was the thing that cost him everything. We had been married for 6 years. The first 2 were genuinely good, or at least I believed they were. He was charming in the way certain men are charming, the kind that makes you feel specifically chosen, specifically seen. His mother had cultivated 30 years of social life, built entirely on the appearance of inherited wealth, and she approved of the marriage primarily because she assumed my income would stabilize her son's perpetually unstable finances. She was not wrong about that. By year 3, I had started noticing things. Small things at first: a transfer from our joint account with no matching invoice, a contractor payment with no corresponding work order. I did not confront him. That is not my training. My training is to document, trace, and wait until what you have is irrefutable. So I waited, and what I found over the following 3 years of careful, quiet documentation was not small at all. My mother-in-law had established a private family foundation in 2018. The kind of charitable vehicle that certain Ontario families use for tax efficiency and reputation management. The foundation hosted 1 gala per year at a hotel in Yorkville, raised money for a children's hospital wing that bore the family name, and accepted substantial donations from people who wanted access to her social circle. What it was also doing, according to my audit, was writing checks to a property management company that managed no properties, a consulting firm with no employees, and a professional services vendor whose registered address was a mailbox in the Cayman Islands. My husband was a co-signing officer on the foundation's accounts. He knew. I had known for 14 months before that morning on the porch. I had said nothing, attended every family dinner, sat through every gala in whatever dress my mother-in-law had decided was presentable enough for her table, and deposited my own consulting earnings into a separate account she had no knowledge of. My grandmother, watching the entire marriage from Sudbury with the quiet attention of a woman who had lived 81 years and trusted very few people, had been taking steps of her own. "Back up," my husband said. His voice had changed. The triumph was beginning to crack at the edges. "What do you mean, CRA audit?" Exactly what I said. The numbered company your buyer used is flagged. The transaction you completed this morning will be reviewed. The proceeds, wherever you wired them, will be traced. His mother set her coffee mug down on the railing. She's bluffing, she said flatly. She types numbers into spreadsheets for mid-size manufacturing companies. Don't let her. My husband, I said, turning to face her, can call me whatever he likes. But you should stop talking because anything you say right now is going to be very useful later. She went still. A dead leaf released from the oak tree by the driveway and fell in the silence. Even if there's some issue with the buyer, my husband said, straightening up, reaching for condescension the way he always did when he felt the ground shifting, we are still legally married. Ontario Family Law Act. Whatever's in my account is subject to equalization, and whatever your grandmother left you gets folded into the net family property calculation. I filed first. I control the timeline. You did file first, I said. I appreciate that, actually. It made several things considerably easier. A black SUV turned onto our street. It pulled into our driveway and parked behind my husband's leased truck. The passenger door opened. My sister-in-law stepped out. She is a family law barrister who has been practicing in Toronto for 11 years. She is also married to my husband's younger brother, a quiet, steady man who builds custom furniture in Guelph and who has spent his entire adult life being introduced by his mother as my other son, with that particular inflection that makes the word other sound like a diagnosis. My sister-in-law has spent 11 years absorbing the same woman's particular brand of condescension, tolerated, occasionally praised in a tone that managed to be an insult wearing the clothes of a compliment, never once treated as someone whose opinion about anything that mattered had any value. She had been waiting for this day for a long time. She carried a leather portfolio case and wore her court blazer, which she always puts on when she wants people to understand she is not having a casual conversation. My mother-in-law saw her and her face did something complicated, a flash of relief that died immediately into wariness. Oh, thank goodness, she started. You need to tell her that she can't just. My sister-in-law didn't look at her at all. She walked directly to the porch step, unlatched her portfolio case, and set a bound document on the railing beside me. Everything's filed, she said. All of it. Emergency injunction on the joint accounts, the foundation accounts, and the 3 numbered companies registered to both names. Service of the civil claim was completed at 9:17 this morning. She looked at my husband for the first time. You've been served. The documents went to your office. Your assistant signed for them at the front desk. My husband stared at her. You're my brother's wife. Yes, she said pleasantly. And you are a man who has spent 6 years financially abusing your spouse and embezzling from a charity that raised money for children with cancer. So I suppose we both have surprising roles in this story. This is a conflict of interest. I'll file a complaint with the Law Society first thing. Please do, she said. I notified them myself as a courtesy disclosure 3 weeks ago. There is no conflict. You are not and have never been my client. Your brother and I discussed this carefully over 18 months ago when your sister-in-law first came to us with her documentation. We made a considered family decision. My husband turned to look at me. His face had cycled through several colors in the last several minutes. 18 months, he said. 14, I said. 18 is when I completed the preliminary audit. 14 is when I was certain. You were building a case while we were sleeping in the same house, while you were sitting across from me at dinner every night. He shook his head, laughed a short, hollow laugh. It doesn't matter. Whatever you've got on the foundation, half of your grandmother's estate is still subject to equalization. She just died. We're still married. I looked at him. My grandmother didn't leave me an estate, I said. She left me a discretionary trust, established in 2019 with a corporate trustee, a spendthrift provision, and an exclusion clause modeled on Henson Trust principles. The trust assets are not property. They are not mine to own or encumber. They exist in a completely separate legal structure that your Family Law Act equalization claim cannot reach. I let that settle for exactly 1 moment. My grandmother's notary walked me through the full structure in Sudbury 4 days ago. My grandmother built it specifically for this situation, because she met you twice and decided on the second meeting that she did not trust you with anything she had spent her life building. My mother-in-law made a sound I had never heard from her before, quiet, deflating. The Muskoka cottage, my husband said. Held by the trust. The investment portfolio. Held by the trust. The TFSA. Her TFSA passed to a named beneficiary outside the estate, same with the RRSPs. The cash accounts covered funeral expenses and a small donation to her church. The notary has a full accounting if you'd like to review it. The wind moved down the street and took the last of the oak leaves with it. My mother-in-law gripped the railing. Your grandmother despised my son. She engineered this to destroy us. Old women get paranoid and bitter and they. She met you twice, I said. The first time, you told her that her Sudbury accent made her sound provincial. The second time, you told my husband, loudly enough at our rehearsal dinner that I heard it from the next table, that his biggest mistake was marrying a woman whose family came from a mining town. I looked at her steadily. She wasn't bitter, she was accurate. A red hatchback came fast around the corner and stopped hard at the curb half up on the boulevard. The driver's door swung open. A young woman got out, early 20s, down jacket unzipped despite the cold, visibly pregnant, phone in one hand, paper coffee cup in the other. She scanned the porch until she found my husband. You need to call me back, she said, walking toward us. Telling. I left 11 voice messages. The landlord says the check you gave me bounced. He wants me out by Friday and I am 8 months along and I have nowhere to. She stopped, she looked at me, at my sister-in-law, at my mother-in-law, then back at my husband. Who are these people? She said. He moved toward her, hands raised. This isn't a good time. You told me you were almost divorced, she said, her voice rising. You told me it was a separation in name only and the papers would be final by September. It's November. You said you were selling a property and the money would set us up while you sorted out the custody and the business. She looked at the house, at the porch, at all of it. This is the house, isn't it? This is the house you said you were selling. The house is currently before the courts, my sister-in-law said from the step. The young woman stared at her. Who are you? His brother's wife. I'm legal counsel for his wife. The young woman repeated those two words, his wife, with the particular tone of someone recalibrating an entire understanding of their own life. She turned on my husband. You told me she knew. You said she was fine with it. You said you'd been emotionally separated for years. He told the previous one something similar, my mother-in-law said from the railing, and then seemed to realize, one beat too late, that the word previous confirmed she had known, which meant she had been complicit. My sister-in-law's pen was already moving across her legal pad. He cried, the young woman said, quieter now. He actually sat in my car and cried and told me that you couldn't have children and that the doctors said it was affecting your mental health and that he stayed out of loyalty because that's the kind of man he is. She looked at me directly for the first time. He made me feel sorry for him. I had been standing on that porch for 34 minutes. I had not cried once. I didn't cry now. I felt something settle in my chest, not anger exactly, more like the particular clarity you feel at the end of a long and complicated audit when the final number confirms precisely what you already knew. Precise, cold, entirely without surprise. He used a version of that story with the woman before you, my sister-in-law said, not looking up from her notes. Different details. Same structure. I have the text records going back 14 months. My husband turned on her with real venom. You sat at my mother's dinner table for years and you were collecting evidence on me the entire time. Yes, she said. Your turkey has always been dry, by the way. I've thought so for years. It's a genuine relief to finally say it out loud. The sound from the end of the street was quiet at first and then unmistakable. Two vehicles moving with that specific purposeful steadiness that government vehicles carry when they are not responding to an emergency but arriving at a conclusion. A CRA compliance and investigations vehicle, dark blue, turned into our crescent. An RCMP cruiser followed it. My husband saw them. He reached for his phone, opened his banking app. I watched his face go through the specific sequence I had seen in the faces of clients over 9 years. The login, the loading screen, the lock screen he had not put there himself. He tried a second account, a third, each one the same. The accounts are frozen, I said. The injunction was granted this morning. He looked at me. For the first time, there was no performance in his face, no calculation, just the raw recognition of a man who has arrived at the moment he had been certain would never come. You reported us to the CRA, he said. I submitted a full forensic report through the LEADS program 14 months ago. My sister-in-law handled the legal structure around it. We were asked by the investigators to maintain the appearance of normalcy while the audit ran. I paused. You should know that the Foundation's false vendor structure has been fully mapped. Every diverted dollar has been traced. The documentation runs to 412 pages. The lead CRA investigator, a woman in a dark jacket, walked up the driveway and stopped a measured distance from my husband. She identified herself and read the particulars from the warrant document in her hand. The charges included fraud over $5,000, tax evasion, and diversion of charitable donations, the specific language that triggers mandatory escalation in Canadian federal proceedings. My mother-in-law drew herself up. Decades of curated dignity, pearls and posture, and the absolute conviction that this kind of thing did not happen to people who had donated enough to have their name on a hospital wing. "I want my solicitor," she said, immediately. "You have absolutely no idea who I am in this city. I have a personal relationship with our Member of Parliament. I have contributed substantially to every civic institution." "You'll have full opportunity to contact your solicitor at the detachment," the investigator said, with the patient and entirely unmoved tone of someone who has had this exact conversation many times. My mother-in-law pressed her hand to her chest, let her knees soften slightly, looked at the RCMP officer beside her with an expression that had, on many previous occasions, caused people to become very solicitous very quickly. "My heart," she said. I looked at her. "You did the same thing at our wedding," I said. "When the florist sent the wrong centerpieces and you didn't want to cover the change fee, you recovered the moment my husband paid it from our joint account." The officer's expression did not change by a single degree. He took her arm with professional evenness and guided her toward the vehicle. My husband did not try anything dramatic. He stood very still, and I think it was in that stillness that the full accounting finally reached him, not the legal particulars, which he had been trying to recalculate since I'd shown him the first page, but the actual weight of what had been built against him, quietly and carefully, by the woman he had genuinely never stopped thinking of as just a bookkeeper. "I underestimated you," he said, not as an apology. As a fact he was acknowledging finally because there was no alternative left. "Yes," I said, "you did." The lead investigator paused before returning to her vehicle. She extended her hand. "The documentation package your team submitted through the LEADS program was among the most thoroughly constructed we've received in several years. We'll be in touch regarding the whistleblower file and the recovery allocation." As a registered CRA whistleblower, 15% of confirmed tax recoveries above a threshold amount is directed to the reporting party. The Foundation had diverted approximately $3.2 million through its false vendor structure. I had already done that math. My brother-in-law arrived from Guelph 20 minutes after the CRA vehicles left. He stood in the driveway in his work clothes, with sawdust still on the collar of his jacket, and looked at the evidence tape across the side door and the empty porch. His whole life, his mother had introduced him as "my other son," with an inflection that made "other" sound like an explanation for a disappointment. He had spent his adult life working twice as hard for half the acknowledgement, in a household where worth was determined by one woman's preferences and enforced by her favorite child. I told him what else the documentation had uncovered. The Foundation, 4 years earlier, had received a bequest with a condition attached, a condition entitling my brother-in-law to a seat on the board, as specified in his late father's donor agreement. My mother-in-law had never disclosed this to him. She had signed a waiver in his name, forged, removing him from consideration before the board had ever been formally notified he was entitled to a seat. That waiver was now part of the federal evidentiary record. He stood quiet for a moment. He is a man of few words, which his family had always held against him, because in that household volume had always been mistaken for substance. Then he looked at his wife, and something moved between them that didn't require interpretation. My sister-in-law looked at me over his shoulder. She nodded once. 2 months later, I sat at a desk on King Street West in downtown Toronto on a Tuesday in January, with snow coming off the lake in long horizontal sweeps. The office was not large. 3 workstations, a small boardroom, good light, and the espresso machine my sister-in-law had insisted on as a non-negotiable item in the lease negotiation. The walls were mostly bare. We had been open for 11 days and had taken on 4 clients. The firm's mandate was specific: forensic financial investigation and legal support for individuals navigating financially abusive relationships, hidden asset situations, and fraudulent transfers of matrimonial property. We worked with 2 legal aid partners in Ontario. We charged on a sliding scale. We had already been contacted by a social worker in Hamilton who wanted to talk about a referral arrangement for her clients. A new intake form had arrived through our secure portal the previous evening. A woman in Mississauga, 43 years old, a registered nurse, whose husband had recently told her their joint RRSP accounts were empty and he had no explanation for why. She knew something was wrong. She had no idea yet how to prove it. I opened a new client file and typed her information into the first field. Outside, the snow had thickened into the kind of steady, quieting fall that muffles Toronto and makes the city briefly feel like somewhere else. I thought about my grandmother, who had built her own careful life in Sudbury over 81 years and had never once wasted a single thing, not money, not words, not patience, who had sat across from my husband at 2 family dinners and seen him precisely, and had said nothing to me, because she knew I needed to reach my own conclusions, but who had also spent 3 years making certain that when I was ready, there would be nothing he could take and nowhere he could run. She had left a letter with her notary, folded inside the trust documents, 1 short paragraph. Her handwriting was the practical, cramped cursive of a woman who had worked as an office administrator for 20 years and never wasted paper. "You always were the one who noticed things," she had written. "I'm just making sure you have somewhere solid to stand when you do." I pressed my fingers to the keyboard and started working.